The gun pressed against little Hannah's head as she shook with fear, her tiny hand grabbing her dad's sleeve like a lifeline. "You took everything from me," Sungmin said, his voice shaky with anger. "The business. The respect. Everything that should have been mine." Ju-won Park, the most feared gangster in Chicago, was on his knees on the cold warehouse floor. Blood dripped from his lip. The plastic ties dug into his wrists. For the first time ever, he said something he never thought he would. "Please." Sungmin's finger tightened on the trigger. "Too late, cousin." That's when Ju-won spotted her. Zephyrine Wilson, his housekeeper, stepping quietly from the shadows behind Sungmin. The same woman who told him to be quiet just 3 days ago. The woman whose brother was supposedly here to kill him. Their eyes met across the room. And somehow, amazingly, she winked at him. If you're already hooked and want to know how one housekeeper's warning led to this crazy situation, you're exactly who I make these stories for. It would mean the world to me if you'd smash that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Seeing comments from all over the world seriously keeps me going. Alright, let's jump back to the story. Ju-won's black Mercedes drove through Chicago's wet streets late at night. Inside, he loosened his tie and checked the time. 1:37 a.m. Late, even for him. The meeting with the 3 rival gangs had gone on forever. Just a bunch of guys with big egos, all wanting promises that their territories would stay safe, that they'd keep making money, that Ju-won wouldn't take over their business. They all signed the deal in the end. Peace, or whatever passed for peace in their world, had been reached. Ju-won stretched his neck, feeling it crack. 15 years of building up the American branch of his Korean gang had taught him that real power wasn't about guns or killing people. It was about those quiet moments when enemies became partners. When they signed on the dotted line because they had no other choice. His phone buzzed. A text from his daughter's nanny, sent hours earlier. "Hannah asked for you at bedtime again. Told her you'd visit her in her dreams." A familiar guilt hit him in the chest. Hannah was 9 now, and the time between his visits to the country house where she lived kept getting longer. Soon she'd stop asking for him completely. The car pulled up to his tall building that stood out against the Chicago skyline. The lobby was empty this late, with just the security guard nodding respectfully as Ju-won walked by. The private elevator went up smoothly, 40 floors between him and the street below, between the man who gave orders that ended lives and the dad who missed tucking in his daughter. When the elevator doors opened to his private entryway, he expected darkness. His housekeeper, Zephyrine Wilson, should have been in bed hours ago. The apartment should have been clean, quiet, waiting for him to come home. Instead, one lamp was on, casting shadows across the marble floor. And there stood Zephyrine, completely still, one finger pressed against her lips. "Stay silent," she whispered, barely making a sound. Ju-won froze. Nobody told him what to do. People waited for his words, his approval, his orders. He had 24 armed guards who would die before letting anyone get into his penthouse. His security system cost more than most houses. But something in Zephyrine's eyes, fear mixed with determination, made him hold back the angry response he wanted to give. In 5 years working for him, he'd never seen this look on her face. Never seen anything break her professional calm. She moved quickly toward him, her grip surprisingly strong as she pulled him away from the elevator, into the shadows near the grand piano in the living room. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice automatically dropping to match her whisper. "They're here," she said, looking right at him. "In your home. If you go in there now, everything falls apart." The smell of Zephyrines' lemon cleaning spray mixed with something else, fear, danger. Ju-won instinctively reached for the gun under his jacket. "Who?" he asked, eyes already scanning the room for threats and escape routes. "Who's in my home?" Zephyrines' grip tightened. "Hitmen. 3 of them. And your daughter is in the bedroom." His blood went cold. "Hannah?" The name came out like a prayer and a curse all at once. "Hannah's at the country house. 30 miles from here. With my mother and 6 guards. Zephyrine shook her head, her normally perfect braids a little messy, showing something bad had happened before he arrived. She had bad dreams about you, she said, her voice catching. Your mother brought her to the city. They got here an hour ago, hoping to surprise you tomorrow morning. I put them in your room while I got the guest room ready. Ju-won felt like the floor was dropping out from under him. In 15 years, he'd faced death more times than he could count. Had stared down guns without flinching. Had ordered people killed without hesitation. But nothing had prepared him for the fear he felt now. Hannah was here. In an apartment with armed killers. His daughter, the only pure thing in his life, was in danger because of him. How did they get past security? He asked, every muscle in his body ready to move. Your new bodyguard, Taisu, Zephyrine said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. He turned off the alarms at 10:42 p.m. I saw him do it on the security camera. Another shock. Taisu had only joined his security team 3 months ago, with strong recommendations from Ju-won's cousin Sungmin. How do you know they're professionals? He asked, already thinking about options, the fastest way to get to his daughter. Because I recognized one of them on the outside cameras, Zephyrine said, her next words hitting him like a punch. Darius Blackwood. Just the name made Ju-won's skin go cold. Darius Blackwood, the famous killer who had taken out 3 drug bosses in just 1 month last year. A ghost who left no traces, only bodies. How do you know Blackwood? He demanded, suddenly suspicious of the woman who had worked in his home for 5 years. The woman who somehow knew things she shouldn't know. Zephyrine met his gaze, her dark eyes steady despite everything. He's my half-brother, she said, the confession hanging between them like a knife. Different mothers, same father. And when I saw him on the monitor, I knew exactly why he was here. Ju-won stared at her, everything in his mind shifting. For 5 years, this woman had cleaned his home, cooked his meals, even watched Hannah during her visits. All while being connected to one of the most dangerous men in their world. Why are you helping me? He asked, his voice hardening. Why not just let them do what they came to do? Zephyrine's eyes softened a little, the change so small he almost missed it. Because your daughter drew me a picture last month, she said simply. A family picture with you, her grandmother, and me standing together outside this building. She called me Aunt Zeffy. Her voice caught again, just slightly. Nobody has ever made me part of their family before. Before Ju-won could process this, he heard a small sound through the apartment, quiet, but a father couldn't miss it. Hannah's voice, shaking. Not asleep. Not safe. How many? His daughter called softly for her grandmother. I heard something. Zephyrine hand clamped over Ju-won's mouth before he could call back. They'll hear you, she whispered, her lips almost touching his ear. Trust me. 60 seconds. In Ju-won's world, trust was a luxury he'd never been able to afford. But with his daughter's voice in his ears, with 3 killers somewhere between him and Hannah, he made the most dangerous decision of his life. He nodded. Zephyrine hand fell away from his mouth. Follow me, she whispered. And stay silent. Zephyrine moved silently through Ju-won's apartment, leading him down the dark hallway toward his home office. Every step was careful, practiced. Ju-won followed close behind, his hand still resting on the gun under his jacket. The hallways he walked through every day now felt like enemy territory. His own home had become a trap. When they reached his office, Zephyrine went straight to the bookshelf against the far wall. Her fingers found a specific book, a Korean poetry collection he'd never actually read. She pulled it halfway out, and a soft click echoed in the quiet room. The entire bookshelf swung inward, revealing a hidden door. How did you? Ju-won began, but Zephyrine just shook her head, putting her finger to her lips again. They stepped into a small, windowless room that Ju-won had designed himself when he bought the penthouse. His security center. His control room. His fortress. Tonight, it felt like a tomb. Banks of monitors lined the walls, showing every angle of his apartment in crystal clear detail. Security feeds from the hallways, the kitchen, the living room, the bedrooms. Nothing moved in Ju-won Park's home without being recorded. Zephyrin closed the hidden door behind them, finally able to speak above a whisper. This is the only room they don't know about. Tae-soo never accessed the blueprints for this section. Ju-won barely heard her. His eyes were fixed on the monitors, watching three men in tactical gear moving through his kitchen. They wore black from head to toe. Their movements were coordinated, precise. These weren't random thugs, they were trained professionals. Each carried modified weapons with suppressors attached. They were here to kill, and to do it quietly. There, Zephyrin said, pointing to the tallest figure. The one giving hand signals to the others. That's Darius. My brother. Even through the grainy security feed, Ju-won could see the family resemblance. The same tall, lean build. The same way of holding himself. But where Zephyrin's eyes were always alert and observant, Darius's held something colder. On another screen, Ju-won spotted Tae-soo, his bodyguard of only 3 months, casually disabling the last security sensor in the hallway. The same man who had smiled and joked with him just that morning. The same man who had driven him to the meeting with the rival families. Tae-soo was recommended by Sung-min, Ju-won said, the pieces falling into place. My own cousin. Perfect credentials, Zephyrin agreed. Perfect references. All lies, Ju-won finished. He turned his attention to another monitor, this one showing his bedroom. His breath caught in his throat. Hannah lay asleep in his king-sized bed, looking tiny against the expensive sheets. Her small face peaceful in sleep, completely unaware of the danger moving through the apartment. Beside her sat his mother, Sukja, her silver hair neatly pinned back as always. Her knitting needles moved steadily in the dim glow of the nightlight, creating something that would probably be a scarf for Hannah. Another gift for the granddaughter she rarely saw. Ju-won's hands began to shake. In 15 years of running his organization, he'd faced death countless times. He'd stared down gun barrels without blinking. He'd ordered executions without hesitation. But seeing his daughter there, sleeping peacefully while killers moved toward her, broke something inside him. When I saw Darius on the external cameras, I tried calling you right away, Zephyrin said, her voice steady but tight. Your phone was off for the meeting. Ju-won nodded. Protocol for meetings with rival families. No distractions. No interruptions. I had a choice, she continued. Wait and hope you returned in time, or try to handle 3 professional killers myself. You chose to wait, Ju-won said, not an accusation but a statement of fact. I chose to prepare, Zephyrin corrected. I moved everything valuable out of your safe, including the blackmail material on Senator Westfield. That's what they're really after. For a moment, Ju-won's mind drifted back to the first time he'd held Hannah. She had been so small, so fragile, with tiny fingers that gripped his thumb with surprising strength. He remembered her first steps, wobbly but determined. The day she had called him Appa for the first time, her small face lighting up with pride at mastering the Korean word for father. He remembered the promise he'd made at her mother's funeral, to always keep Hannah safe, no matter what. And now, because of him, she was in danger. I hired you 5 years ago, Ju-won said, looking at Zephyrin with new eyes. Through the most reputable agency in Chicago. Your background check showed nothing unusual. Because there was nothing to find, Zephyrin said. I really was just a housekeeper looking for a good position. The connection to Darius was buried under different last names, different paperwork. Even I didn't know he had moved to Chicago until 3 years ago. Ju-won thought about the small moments he'd witnessed over the years. Zephyrin teaching Hannah how to make braided bread in the kitchen, flour dusting both their noses. Zephyrin listening carefully as Hannah practiced her Korean phrases, nodding encouragingly at each attempt. Zephyrin staying late when his meetings ran long, ensuring Hannah never felt abandoned during her visits to the city. So why did you stay, once you knew your brother was here? Once you knew what I do for a living? Zephyrine pulled out her phone and showed him a series of photos she'd taken over the months. Security protocols. Schedules. Patrol rotations. Building blueprints. Everything about his operation, meticulously documented. "You think I was spying on you," she said, reading his expression perfectly. "I was learning how to protect Hannah when you couldn't. Because in my experience, men like you always have enemies. And enemies always come for the children first." She swiped to another photo, this one of Hannah asleep in her bedroom at the country estate, taken through a window from outside. "Your security team never even noticed me taking this. 3 of your guards were on their phones instead of watching the perimeter. I could have been anyone." Ju-won felt a chill run through him. Not just at the security breach, but at the thought of how much this woman had seen. How much she knew. How easily she could have hurt him if she'd wanted to. "Why are you showing me this now?" he asked. "Because you need to understand that I'm not the enemy," Zephyrine said simply. "I've had 1,000 chances to hurt you, hurt Hannah, sabotage your business. I didn't take any of them." On the monitor, the 3 intruders finished their sweep of the kitchen and began moving down the hallway. Toward the bedroom. Toward Hannah. "We need to move," Ju-won said, reaching for the door. "Wait," Zephyrine held up her hand. From her pocket, she pulled out Ju-won's phone, the one he thought was still in his jacket. "I took this when I pulled you into the shadows. Had to make sure it was silenced." As she handed it back to him, the screen lit up with an incoming text message. From Sungmin, his cousin. The man who had recommended Taisu. The man who had always smiled just a little too wide at family gatherings. The message read, "I'm sorry, cousin. But family should always come first." Ju-won stared at the words, feeling ice spread through his veins. This wasn't a random attack. This wasn't a business rival. This was betrayal from within his own family. "We need a plan," he said, his voice hardening. "Now." Ju-won reached for a small red button hidden beneath the security desk. "Cover your mouth and nose," he warned Zephyrine. She pulled a handkerchief from her pocket, quickly pressing it over her face. Ju-won covered his own face with his sleeve, then pushed the button. A deafening hiss filled the apartment as the fire suppression system activated. White foam poured from ceiling vents, quickly flooding the hallways. But this wasn't ordinary fire suppressant. Ju-won had modified it during the last security upgrade. The foam contained a mild sedative, enough to disorient anyone caught in it. He never imagined he'd be thanking his own paranoia for possibly saving his family's lives. "That should slow them down," he said through his sleeve. Through the security monitors, they watched the 3 intruders stumble in confusion as the foam descended. The tallest one, Darius, shouted something to the others, but his voice was muffled by the hissing system. All 3 men began coughing, their coordinated movements growing clumsy as the sedative began to take effect. "We have maybe 15 minutes, Zephyrine said, moving toward the door. "The sedative isn't strong enough to knock them out, just slow them down." 15 minutes is all we need, Ju-won replied, already following her lead. Instead of heading back into the main hallway, Zephyrine pushed against a section of wall that looked completely solid. It swung open, revealing a narrow service corridor. "This way," she said. "The maintenance staff uses these passages. We can reach the bedroom without being seen." Ju-won stared at her in surprise. "How do you know about these?" "Even my security chief doesn't use these routes." "I've worked here for 5 years, Mr. Park," she answered simply, already moving through the tight space. "I notice things." They moved swiftly through the hidden corridors, the sounds of confused shouting and coughing growing distant behind them. Ju-won couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for the woman leading him through his own home by routes he'd never known existed. Through small ventilation grates, they could glimpse the main hallways filled with white foam. One of the intruders stumbled past, his movements sluggish, weapon hanging loosely at his side. "The bedroom is just ahead," Zephyrine whispered, pointing to a service door. "This leads to your closet, then to the main bedroom." Ju-won pushed ahead of her, drawing his gun. I go first. He eased the service door open, slipping into his walk-in closet. The bedroom door was just a few steps away. He could hear nothing from inside, no sounds of struggle, no voices. With his heart pounding, he slowly turned the handle and pushed the door open. The sight that greeted him made him freeze. His mother, Sukja, stood in the center of the room, a heavy brass lamp raised above her head, ready to strike. Her 73-year-old frame was positioned protectively in front of Hannah, who peeked out from behind her grandmother's legs. Both were fully dressed, Hannah even wearing her shoes and coat. For a split second, no one moved. Then recognition dawned in Sukja's eyes. Ju-won, she exhaled, lowering the lamp slightly but not putting it down. Appa. Hannah's face lit up with joy. She darted around her grandmother and flung herself at her father. Ju-won dropped to one knee, catching his daughter as she launched into his arms. Her small body crashed against his chest, her arms wrapping tightly around his neck, her face buried in his shoulder. I knew you'd come, she whispered against his ear. I told Halmini you'd come. He held her close, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. For a moment, everything else faded away, the danger, the betrayal, the years of guilt. All that existed was this small, warm person in his arms. We need to move, Zephyrine voice broke the moment. Now. Sukja's eyes narrowed at the sight of the housekeeper. You knew about this. I'm trying to help you, Mrs. Park, Zephyrine replied evenly. All of you. Sukja's grip tightened on the lamp. Despite her age, her hands were steady. I heard them in the hallway. Talking about Ju-won's files. About the senator. You heard correctly, Zephyrine nodded. But we can discuss that once we're safely away from here. Ju-won stood, keeping Hannah in his arms. Mother, we need to go. There are men here to kill us. There are always men trying to kill us, Sukja replied sharply. I lived through the military dictatorship in Korea, son. I've seen worse than some American thugs with guns. Even in crisis, her eyes communicated her disappointment, the same look she'd given him 15 years ago when he took over the family business. The look that said, this danger is of your own making. I prepared Hannah as soon as I heard them, she continued, positioning herself between the door and her family. I knew we might need to run. And we do, Zephyrine said. Right now. Follow me. She led them back through the closet, but instead of returning to the service corridor, she moved to the far wall, running her hand along the expensive wood paneling. What are you doing? Ju-won asked, shifting Hannah in his arms. This apartment was built in the 1920s, Zephyrine said, her fingers finding a small indentation in the wood. During Prohibition. The original owner needed discreet exits. She pressed, and a section of the wall slid back, revealing a narrow elevator that Ju-won had never seen before. How do you know about this? He demanded. This wasn't in any documents. This wasn't in any plans. I measured the walls, Zephyrine replied simply, ushering them inside the cramped space. The apartment is smaller on the inside than the blueprints show. Mathematics doesn't lie, Mr. Park. As they squeezed into the hidden elevator, Ju-won realized Zephyrine hadn't just been studying his security systems. She'd been preparing for exactly this kind of emergency. The elevator was old but operational. Zephyrine pressed a button for the parking garage, 3 floors below. This comes out in a maintenance closet, she explained. From there, we can reach your private parking area without being seen. Ju-won's phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Byung-ho, his most trusted lieutenant. Boss, Byung-ho's voice was urgent. We've been compromised. Tae-soo was seen entering Senator Westfield's office yesterday. The senator? Ju-won's grip on Hannah tightened. What does Westfield have to do with this? Everything, Byung-ho replied. The testimony tomorrow. Tae-soo was after the blackmail material you've been holding over Westfield. But there's more. Sung-min has been meeting with the senator for months. Senator Westfield, a politician Ju-won had been cultivating for years, was scheduled to testify before Congress the next day. Ju-won's blackmail material was meant to ensure that testimony went in his favor. The men in your apartment weren't sent to kill you, Byung-ho continued. Just to get the files and disappear before you knew anything was wrong. But Hannah was there, Ju-won said, understanding dawning. They didn't expect witnesses. Exactly. Once they found her and your mother, the stakes changed. No witnesses could be left. The elevator jerked suddenly, then stopped. The lights flickered and went out, leaving them in darkness. A moment later, emergency lighting kicked in, bathing them in dim red light. On Zephyrine phone, a security alert flashed, building main power cut. Backup generators online. Someone knew about this escape route, she said quietly. And from above, they heard it, the unmistakable sound of the elevator shaft door being forced open. The elevator hung suspended between floors, emergency lights casting creepy red shadows on their faces. Hannah pressed herself against her father's chest, eyes squeezed shut. Sukja stood perfectly still, her breathing calm and measured even now. Zephyrine was already moving, pulling tools from hidden pockets in her uniform as she reached for the maintenance panel. Can you fix it? Ju-won asked, one arm tight around Hannah. Not fix it, Zephyrine replied, working quickly. Escape it. Above them, the sounds of someone forcing the elevator doors open grew louder. Metal scraped against metal. Voices echoed down the shaft. Zephyrine popped open the ceiling hatch and pulled down a service ladder that folded out from the top of the elevator. This way, she said. Quickly. My mother can't climb that, Ju-won protested, looking at Sukja's elderly frame. Sukja raised an eyebrow. Don't underestimate me, son. We're not going up anyway, Zephyrine said, surprising them both. We're going down. They expect us to climb up toward the parking garage. That's where they're waiting. She went up the ladder first, then reached over the side of the elevator to a maintenance ladder built into the shaft wall. This leads to a sub-basement level that doesn't appear on the building blueprints. Another thing you've noticed? Ju-won asked, unable to keep the suspicion from his voice. Another thing I prepared for, she corrected. Mr. Park, either trust me now or stay here and die with your family. Your choice. The decision took less than a second. Ju-won boosted Hannah up to Zephyrine, who helped the little girl onto the maintenance ladder. Then he helped his mother, who climbed with surprising strength for her age. He followed last, pulling the elevator hatch closed behind him. They descended in tense silence, the only sounds their breathing and the distant shouts from above. Zephyrine led them to a metal door set into the concrete wall of the shaft, marked only with a faded number, B3. This building was constructed during Prohibition, she explained as she worked on the rusty lock. The original owner ran liquor through a network of tunnels connected to speakeasies across the city. Most were sealed up, but not all of them. And you know about these how? Ju-won asked. History books, Zephyrine replied, pushing the door open. And measuring tape. They entered a dusty, forgotten hallway with brick walls and a low ceiling. Zephyrine pulled a small flashlight from her pocket, illuminating a path ahead that hadn't seen footprints in decades, except for one set, fresh and familiar. You've been here before, Ju-won realized. I've mapped every exit route from your home, she said simply. Follow me and stay close. The tunnel stretched ahead, branching occasionally. Zephyrine never hesitated, taking turns with confidence, leading them deeper beneath the city. Hannah clung to her father's hand, surprisingly calm for a child in such a frightening situation. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 15 minutes, they climbed a narrow staircase that ended at a trapdoor. Zephyrine pushed it open and helped them up into what appeared to be the storage room of an abandoned dry cleaning shop. They emerged onto a street 3 blocks from Ju-won's building, gasping in the cold night air. The city continued its normal late-night rhythm around them, completely unaware of their escape or the danger they'd left behind. My car is around the corner, Zephyrine said, already moving. We need to get to the safe house before they realize which way we went. 10 minutes later, they were driving through empty streets in an unremarkable gray sedan that Ju-won had never seen before. Hannah had fallen asleep against her grandmother's shoulder in the back seat. Suk-ja stroked her granddaughter's hair, her eyes watchful, missing nothing. Where are we going? Ju-won asked from the passenger seat. Industrial district, Zephyrin answered, taking another turn to ensure they weren't followed. A warehouse owned by a shell company that even your accountants don't know about. And you do? I make it my business to know things that might keep Hannah safe, she replied. 30 minutes later, they pulled into a deserted lot surrounded by other seemingly abandoned warehouses. Zephyrin unlocked a rusty side door and ushered them inside. The interior was nothing like the decrepit exterior suggested. One corner had been converted into a living space with cots, blankets, a small kitchenette, and a bathroom. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with non-perishable food, medical supplies, and bottled water. A table held communication equipment, burner phones, a laptop, radio. Most telling was the small box of children's books and coloring supplies sitting next to one of the cots. This place hadn't just been prepared for an emergency, it had been prepared for an emergency involving Hannah. You can put her down there, Zephyrin told Ju-won, pointing to the smallest cot, already made up with clean sheets and a pink blanket. Ju-won gently laid his sleeping daughter down. Suk-ja immediately sat beside her, protective even now. Only when Hannah was settled did Ju-won turn to confront Zephyrin. Who are you? He demanded, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Hannah. Really? Not the housekeeper story. The truth. Zephyrin sighed, sinking into a chair. For the first time, she looked tired. I told you the truth about Darius. He's my half-brother. Same father, different mothers. And what does he do besides break into people's homes? He's what you might call a cleaner for hire. But he has a particular code. He only takes jobs against people who harm children through their criminal activities. Drug dealers who sell near schools. Traffickers. People who profit from hurting kids. Ju-won's stomach tightened. And someone convinced him I'm that kind of monster. 3 years ago, Zephyrin confirmed. Someone approached him with evidence that you were involved in something that hurt children. I haven't spoken to him since then, we had a falling out over another job. But when I saw him tonight, I knew exactly why he was there. So you've been working for me for 5 years, but coincidentally, your brother decides I'm a target 3 years ago? I took this job to watch you, Zephyrin admitted. To judge for myself if what people said about you was true. To find proof, one way or another. And what did you find? Ju-won's voice had gone dangerously quiet. A man drowning in guilt over his wife's death, she replied honestly. Trying to be a father while running an empire. Making mistakes, certainly. But not the kind of monster they painted you as. You've done bad things, Mr. Park. But harming children isn't one of them. Before Ju-won could respond, Hannah stirred on the cot. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, looking around the unfamiliar space with curiosity rather than fear. Appa? Where are we? Somewhere safe, sweetheart, he said, moving to sit beside her. Hannah dug into her coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. I brought this for you, she said, carefully unfolding it. I made it last week. It was a drawing in bright crayon colors. 4 figures stood in front of what was clearly meant to be their apartment building. Ju-won, recognizable by his suit, Suk-ja with silver hair, Hannah in the middle, and beside them, a tall figure with neatly braided hair. All 4 were holding hands under a bright yellow sun. It's our family, Hannah explained, pointing to each figure. You, Halmione, me, and Aunt Zephy. She looked up at Zephyrin with a smile so innocent it seemed impossible in their current situation. You're my family too, she told Zephyrin matter-of-factly. Halmione said family is anyone who stays when things get scary. And you always stay. For the first time since this nightmare began, Zephyrin's carefully maintained composure cracked. Something flashed across her face, pain, longing, determination, all mixed together before she quickly controlled her expression again. But Ju-won had seen it. In that moment, he understood why this woman had risked everything to help them. Not for him. For Hannah. His burner phone buzzed in his pocket. A video message from Sungmin. He opened it, angling the screen away from Hannah. The video showed his downtown office, his headquarters, surrounded by police cars. Byung-ho, his most trusted lieutenant, was being led out in handcuffs. Text appeared beneath the video: "Your empire is already falling, cousin. Come home and face what you've built. Or stay hidden and watch everyone you've ever trusted go down for your crimes." Another video followed immediately. This one showed Tae-soo, recovered from the sedative, holding up a tablet playing a cartoon, Hannah's favorite show. "The girl loves this show," Tae-soo's voice said from off-camera. "She watches it every Saturday morning at exactly 8 a.m. We know her schedule. We know her school. We know everywhere she goes." Ju-won felt cold sweat break out across his back. They could run. They could hide. But they could never hide Hannah forever. Gray morning light crept through the warehouse's dirty windows. Hannah had finally fallen into deep sleep on the small cot, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Sukja sat beside her, her back straight despite having been awake all night. Her weathered hand gently smoothed Hannah's hair, over and over, a motion as old as motherhood itself. Across the room, Ju-won and Zephyrin sat at a small metal table, coffee mugs between them. Neither had slept. The weight of everything unsaid hung in the air like smoke. "No more half-truths," Ju-won finally said, his voice rough from exhaustion. "If we're going to survive this, I need to know everything. Who you really are. Why my cousin wants me dead. All of it." Zephyrin wrapped her hands around her mug, as if drawing strength from its warmth. "Where should I start?" "The beginning. Your training. The moves you made last night, that wasn't just good observation. That was military." A small, tired smile crossed Zephyrin's face. 8 years. Military intelligence. I was honorably discharged 6 years ago. Why did you leave? Because of Darius. My brother was accused of working as a hired operative. The investigation cleared him of the worst charges, but the association. She shrugged. My career was over. So after the military, you became a housekeeper? Ju-won asked, skepticism clear in his voice. After the military, I drifted, Zephyrin corrected. Then someone approached me with a job offer. They said a man named Ju-won Park was using his shipping empire to move products that harm children. They wanted someone inside your home to confirm it. And you took the job. I took the job because I believed them. She met his eyes directly. I was supposed to find evidence and report back. Instead, I found a flawed man trying to be a good father. Ju-won leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. Why would they target me specifically? What made them think I was involved in something like that? 3 years ago, Zephyrin said quietly. A shipment your organization transported. It was labeled as pharmaceuticals. We moved dozens of pharmaceutical shipments. It's one of our legitimate businesses. This particular shipment wasn't legitimate. It contained counterfeit medications that ended up in children's hospitals throughout the Midwest. Ju-won's face went pale. What? Fake antibiotics. Diluted cancer drugs. Placebos packaged as life-saving medications. Zephyrin's voice had gone flat, emotionless. Hundreds of children received them. Some got sicker. Some died. That's impossible, Ju-won whispered. We verify all pharmaceutical cargo. Multiple checks. Quality control. I would have known. Would you? Zephyrin interrupted. Or would your managers handle that? The people you trusted to vet the cargo? Byung-ho was in charge of pharmaceutical shipping 3 years ago, Ju-won said slowly. But he was promoted after, after a rival tried to move in on our territory. And who took his place? Ju-won closed his eyes. Sungmin. The same Sungmin who's now trying to frame you for everything, Zephyrin confirmed. The same man who recommended Taisu as your bodyguard. You're saying my own cousin arranged a shipment of counterfeit medicine, then covered it up when children were harmed? I'm saying someone in your organization did. And since then, several people who might have known about it have either died in accidents, been promoted to positions where they wouldn't ask questions, or they're working with Sungmin, Ju-won finished, the full horror of the situation dawning on him. Zephyrin reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She opened a photo and handed it to Ju-won. The picture showed a young girl, maybe 11 years old, sitting in a hospital bed. Despite being clearly sick, she was smiling, surrounded by coloring books. Her hair was styled in neat braids like Zephyrin's. This is Mina, Zephyrin said softly. My sister's daughter. She was diagnosed with leukemia 4 years ago. 3 years ago, her condition suddenly worsened after a round of treatment. The doctors couldn't understand why the medications weren't working. Ju-won stared at the photo, unable to look away from the child's smile. By the time they realized what was happening and got her real medication, permanent damage had been done, Zephyrin continued. She survived, but she has heart complications now. She'll need medication her entire life. I'm sorry, Ju-won said, the words feeling painfully inadequate. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. Zephyrin took back the phone. That's why I'm still here. I came looking for a monster to blame. Instead, I found another victim of the same people who hurt Mina. From across the room, Sukja's voice cut in. My father-in-law killed a man during the Japanese occupation. Both Ju-won and Zephyrin turned to look at the elderly woman. She hadn't moved from Hannah's side, but her eyes were fixed on her son. He was in the resistance, Sukja continued, her voice steady. One night, Japanese soldiers came to the village looking for him. A neighbor, a frightened man with a family, told them where to find him. Your grandfather escaped, but he went back later and slit that man's throat while he slept. Ju-won stared at his mother. She had never told him this story before. He told me this story on his deathbed, Sukja said. He said, I did a terrible thing to protect my family. But I never let myself forget I did it. That's the difference between a man who does bad things for a reason and a monster who does them without thought. She slowly rose from Hannah's bedside and came to sit at the table with them. Good men can do terrible things in pursuit of survival, she said, looking directly at her son. But what separates them from monsters is what they do when they discover the truth. Ju-won met his mother's gaze. Her eyes held no judgment, only a question. What kind of man will you be now, my son? The one who hides from consequences? Or the one who faces them? Before Ju-won could answer, Zephyrin's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She checked it, her expression going still as she read. It's from Darius, she said. An encrypted channel we used to use. She turned the phone so Ju-won could read the message. I know you're with him. I know you've chosen your side. But you should know, Sungmin has the senator's ear. Tomorrow morning, Ju-won Park will be named as the mastermind behind the counterfeit medicine operation. He'll be the most wanted man in America. And anyone with him becomes a target. The message ended with coordinates and a time, midnight tonight. He wants to meet, Zephyrin said, looking up from the phone. Just me and him. To explain why I've betrayed our family's promise to protect children. Ju-won looked from the phone to Zephyrin, to his sleeping daughter, to his mother's watchful eyes. What will you tell him? He asked Zephyrin. The truth, she replied. The question is, which truth are you ready to face? Night fell as Zephyrin prepared to leave for the midnight meeting with Darius. She changed from her housekeeper's uniform into dark jeans and a black jacket, practical clothes that wouldn't restrict movement if things went bad. Ju-won watched her from across the warehouse. I'm coming with you. No, you're not, she replied, checking her phone one last time. If Darius sees you, he'll assume the worst. He'll think I've been compromised, or that you're forcing me to meet him. Then I'll stay out of sight. Back up. Zephyrine shook her head. Let me try to reach him. He's still my brother. Sukja looked up from where she sat beside the sleeping Hannah. The housekeeper is right. Your place is here, protecting your daughter. Ju-won frowned, but didn't argue further. Where's the meeting? An abandoned church on the south side, Zephyrine said, tucking her phone away. It's neutral ground for us. When we were kids and our parents fought, we'd meet there. If you're not back in 2 hours. I'll be back, she interrupted. One way or another. She paused at the door, looking back at Hannah's sleeping form. Keep her safe. Always, Ju-won promised. The old church stood dark against the night sky, its broken stained glass windows like hollow eyes staring out at the empty street. Zephyrine approached slowly, hands visible, carrying no weapons. She knew her brother would be watching. The heavy wooden doors creaked as she pushed them open. Moonlight filtered through the damaged roof, casting patches of silver light across the dusty floor. The pews were gone, the altar stripped bare. Only ghosts remained. You actually came alone. The voice echoed from the shadows near where the altar had once stood. Darius stepped into a shaft of moonlight. He looked like Zephyrine's mirror image in many ways, the same tall, lean build, the same sharp cheekbones, the same watchful posture. But where her eyes had softened over the years, his remained cold and hard, like stones at the bottom of a frozen river. You asked me to, she replied simply. I didn't think you'd risk it, given who you're protecting now. Darius kept his distance, studying her face. 5 years working for him, Zephy. 5 years in the home of a man who ships poison to children. He didn't know about the shipment. Darius laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course he claims that. And of course you believe him. I've watched him for 5 years, Zephyrine said, taking a step forward. I've seen how he is with his daughter. I've looked for evidence of the monster they told me about. He's not innocent, Darius. But he's not what they told us. So you betray our promise? Everything we swore after Dad chose money over us again and again? Darius's voice rose with genuine pain. We were supposed to protect children from men like him. You become the very thing you claim to fight. Zephyrine shot back. A weapon for hire. Did you even investigate who hired you? Did you ask why they wanted Ju-won Park dead? Darius went still. Actually, I did. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind whispered through the broken windows, stirring dust motes in the moonlight between them. I was hired to gather evidence against Park, Darius finally said, his voice calmer. Standard job. The money was good. But something felt off, so I did my own research. And what did you find? That Park's cousin Sungmin has been manipulating everyone. Darius pulled out his phone, showing Zephyrine photos of documents. He's been building a case for years, gathering evidence, planting false trails, all to destroy his cousin and take over the organization. Zephyrine moved closer, studying the images. The senator? Not a victim being blackmailed, Darius confirmed. A partner. Westfield's been using Park's shipping routes for his own purposes while setting him up to take the fall if anything went wrong. The counterfeit medicine shipment. Every piece of evidence connecting Park to it was planted by Sungmin and his people. They made sure the paperwork had Park's signature, forged, of course. They made sure witnesses would place him at meetings he never attended. Zephyrine closed her eyes briefly. Why? Why go to such lengths? Power. Darius shrugged. Sungmin believes he should have inherited the family business. His father was the elder brother. By Korean tradition, he should have been next in line. So he poisons children to frame his cousin? Zephyrine's voice hardened. And you were going to help him. I didn't know the full story when I took the job, Darius said defensively. Once I figured it out, I started stalling. A silence fell between them, years of estrangement and unspoken words filling the space. There's a little girl who draws pictures of me as part of her family, Zephyrin finally said. She's 9 years old. She's innocent. Whatever you decide about Ju-won, don't let them hurt Hannah. Darius looked away. You remember what Dad used to say? Family is just a word people use when they want something from you. And we swore we'd never be like him, she reminded him softly. We also swore we'd never protect men who hurt children. Ju-won didn't hurt those children. Sung-min did. Zephyrin took another step closer. Help me prove it. Help me stop the people really responsible. Darius studied his sister's face for a long moment. I don't trust Park. You don't have to. Just trust me. He sighed, running a hand over his close-cropped hair. I'll verify what you've told me. I'll look deeper into Sung-min's operation. But that's all I'm promising for now. It wasn't the alliance she'd hoped for, but it was something. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Darius warned. If I find proof that Park knew about those shipments, all bets are off. Back at the warehouse, Ju-won sat at the small communication center, digging through his organization's records. Sukja had taken over watching Hannah, who still slept peacefully, exhausted from their ordeal. The more Ju-won uncovered, the colder his blood ran. Financial discrepancies dating back 4 years, money moving in ways he'd never authorized. Projects funded that he'd never approved. Communication logs showing encrypted messages between Sung-min and Senator Westfield, beginning long before Ju-won had ever met the politician. And buried deep in archived files, evidence that Sung-min had personally arranged the counterfeit medicine shipment, then blamed lower-level employees who were conveniently killed in what appeared to be a turf war weeks later. He's been planning this for years, Ju-won muttered to himself. Sukja looked over from where she sat. Your uncle always said his son was too ambitious. Too impatient. Why didn't you ever tell me? Would you have listened? She asked simply. You were busy building your empire. Ju-won had no answer for that. He returned to his search, finding more evidence with each passing minute of his cousin's betrayal and the elaborate frame job that had been years in the making. When the warehouse door finally opened at 1:45 a.m., Ju-won reached for his gun before recognizing Zephyrin's silhouette. She stepped inside, a look of cautious hope on her face. Darius is willing to. She froze mid-sentence, eyes scanning the too quiet space. Ju-won? Sukja sat slumped in a chair near the far wall, a cloth pressed to a wound on her head. She was conscious but clearly dazed. Ju-won was nowhere to be seen. And the cot where Hannah had been sleeping was empty. No, Zephyrin whispered, rushing to Sukja's side. What happened? Where are they? The older woman's eyes struggled to focus. Men. They came in through the back. I tried to stop them. Zephyrin spotted something on the table, Hannah's coloring book, left open with a note pinned to the page. She read it, her hands beginning to shake. Family reunion at the docks. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone or the girl pays for your choices. Zephyrin sank into a chair, the note crumpling in her fist. She had convinced her brother to help them. She had found an ally. And while she'd been gone, she had lost everything that mattered. Zephyrin pressed a clean cloth against the cut on Sukja's temple, trying to be gentle despite her shaking hands. The elderly woman winced but remained sitting upright, fighting through the pain to explain what happened. I heard them at the back door, Sukja said, her voice stronger than her pale face suggested. 3 men with guns. They came through an entrance we didn't know was there. How long ago? Zephyrin asked, checking the wound to make sure it wouldn't need stitches. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Sukja closed her eyes briefly. They knew exactly what they wanted. Ju-won and Hannah. When I tried to stop them. She gestured to her head. Did they hurt Hannah? Zephyrin couldn't keep the fear from her voice. No. Ju-won made sure of that. He went quietly when they threatened her. Sukja's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. I'm 73 years old. I should have fought harder. You did everything you could, Zephyrin assured her, though her own heart felt like it might crack open. She had been so close to getting help, to finding a way out of this nightmare. And now. The warehouse door opened. Zephyrin whirled around, gun already in hand. Darius stood in the doorway, hands raised slightly. It's just me. How did you find us? Zephyrin demanded, not lowering her weapon. I put a tracker on your jacket, he admitted. Old habits. I heard about the kidnapping through my network. Sungmin's people aren't exactly quiet when they think they've won. Zephyrin finally lowered the gun. Then you know we're out of time. We're heading into the darkest part of this story right now, and I want to thank you for staying with me this far. If you're feeling the weight of this moment like I am, please take a second to subscribe. It really does help me keep creating stories like this. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I love knowing this story is reaching people around the world. Now, let's see how they're going to get Hannah back. Darius looked from his sister to the injured elderly woman. Is this Ju-won's mother? Sukja straightened her back, meeting his gaze with dignity despite the blood on her temple. I am Sukja Park. And you are the man who was sent to kill my son. I was, Darius acknowledged. Now I might be the only one who can help save him. Zephyrin moved between them. Do your contacts know where they've been taken? A shipping warehouse at the docks. One that Ju-won himself owns. Darius pulled out his phone, showing them a satellite image. Sungmin's idea of poetic justice, apparently. Who else is there? Zephyrin asked, studying the image. About a dozen guards. Taisu is running security. And Senator Westfield is flying in from D.C. tonight. He wants to personally witness the end of Ju-won Park before giving his testimony tomorrow. Sukja slowly stood up, waving away Zephyrin's attempt to help her. We need to leave now. You need to rest, Zephyrin protested. Your head. That is my granddaughter out there, Sukja cut her off. That is my son. I didn't survive wars and dictatorships to hide while my family faces danger. Darius raised an eyebrow. No offense, ma'am, but what exactly can you contribute to a rescue mission? A cold smile crossed Sukja's face. I know things about the Park family business that even my son doesn't know. Secrets his father told me before he died. She walked carefully to the table, picking up her purse. From it, she withdrew a small notebook and a phone that looked at least 10 years old. There's a safety deposit box in Seoul, she said, powering on the ancient device. Inside is evidence that could destroy Senator Westfield, evidence my husband collected 20 years ago, before anyone knew the young politician would rise to power. What kind of evidence? Darius asked. The kind that proves Westfield made his fortune selling military secrets to North Korea. Sukja punched in a number from memory. My husband may have been a criminal, but he was a patriot. He kept the evidence as insurance, never intending to use it unless absolutely necessary. Zephyrin and Darius exchanged looks as Sukja spoke rapidly in Korean to whoever had answered her call. We have 3 people, Zephyrin said, already shifting into planning mode. We need to coordinate. Darius nodded. I can handle the armed guards. That's my specialty. I'll infiltrate the warehouse, Zephyrin said. I know Ju-won's security systems better than anyone. And I, Sukja said, ending her call, will ensure that evidence from Seoul reaches every major news outlet in America. Time to release at midnight. We'll need equipment, Darius said. Weapons, comms, tactical gear. There's a storage locker 2 miles from here, Zephyrin replied. I prepared it years ago. It has everything we need. Darius gave his sister an appraising look. You really did think of everything. Almost everything, she corrected quietly, glancing at the note still crumpled in her hand. As Darius stepped away to make calls to his own contacts, Sukja moved to stand beside Zephyrin. You love my son, she said simply. Not a question. Zephyrin looked away. I care about Hannah. A woman who learns a new language to understand a child's nightmares doesn't do it for the child alone, Sukja observed. A woman who memorizes every emergency exit isn't preparing to run, she's preparing to stand. When Zephyrin remained silent, Sukja continued. My son is not an easy man to love. He has done many things I wish he hadn't. But I see how you look at him. He's not the man I thought he was when I took this job, Zephyrin finally admitted. He's complicated. Flawed. But he's been trying to be better. That's more than most people do. Sukja nodded, a small smile softening her severe face. Then help me save him. And maybe, when this is over, we can be the family my granddaughter already believes we are. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Weapons were checked. Plans were drawn. Security rotations were memorized. By the time darkness fell again, they were as ready as they would ever be. Zephyrin, dressed in black tactical gear, checked her earpiece one last time. Comms check. Clear, came Darius's voice. He was positioned on a rooftop overlooking the warehouse. Clear, echoed Sukja from the van parked 2 blocks away. Despite her age and injury, she had insisted on being part of the operation, coordinating with her contacts in Seoul. Remember, Zephyrin said, we have one shot at this. If anything goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong, Darius interrupted. Just stick to the plan. I've got the external guards in sight. They'll be neutralized in 3 minutes. Zephyrin took a deep breath, checking her watch. 11:42 p.m. Less than 20 minutes until midnight. I'm going in, she whispered. She moved silently through the shadows toward the maintenance entrance she'd identified during their planning. The lock was easy enough to bypass. Ju-won had never upgraded this particular door's security, considering it too unimportant. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and dark, with only emergency lighting casting a dim red glow across stacks of shipping containers. Zephyrin stayed low, moving from shadow to shadow, avoiding the sight lines of the few interior guards. East entrance clear, came Darius's voice in her ear. All external guards neutralized. Moving to position B. Seoul contact confirms evidence transmission ready, Sukja added. All major networks will receive the files at midnight exactly. Zephyrin continued deeper into the warehouse, following the blueprint they'd memorized. Ju-won and Hannah would likely be kept in the central office area, a glass-walled space that overlooked the main floor. She was halfway there when Darius's urgent voice crackled in her earpiece. Zephy. Stop. Don't move. She froze instantly, years of training taking over. What is it? She whispered. Look ahead. Center of the warehouse floor. Zephyrin peered through the darkness, and her blood turned to ice. There sat Hannah, alone in a wooden chair in the middle of the open warehouse floor. No restraints held her. She simply sat there with her eyes closed, small hands clasped in her lap like she was praying. And visible through the gaps in the wooden seat, strapped to the underside of the chair, was a device with blinking red lights. The warehouse office had a large window overlooking the main floor, giving a perfect view of Hannah sitting alone in that wooden chair. Ju-won stood with his hands zip-tied behind his back, forced to watch his daughter through the glass. His split lip had stopped bleeding, but dried blood still caked his chin. His expensive suit was torn and dirty. Beside him, Sungmin paced back and forth, a gun hanging loosely in his right hand. His cousin looked different tonight. Gone was the respectful smile, the careful deference. In its place was a man Ju-won had never truly seen before. You know, I've waited years for this moment, Sungmin said, pausing to look out at Hannah. Years of standing in your shadow. Years of watching everyone follow you, respect you, fear you. Let her go, Ju-won said, his eyes never leaving his daughter. She's innocent. Sungmin laughed. No one in this family is innocent. But don't worry, the device under her chair isn't real. It just needs to look real enough for the photos we'll release tomorrow. Photos? Evidence of your depravity, Sungmin explained, as if talking to a child. A father who would strap his own daughter to a bomb to save himself. Just one more piece of the story we've been building. No one will believe that. Everyone will believe it. Sungmin turned to face his cousin. Because Senator Westfield will stand in front of the press tomorrow and explain how he's been working undercover for years to bring down the notorious Ju-won Park. How he pretended to be corrupted to gain your trust. How he gathered evidence of your crimes, including the counterfeit medicine that killed those children. Ju-won stared at his cousin. And where do you fit in this story? I'm the hero who helped bring you down. The family member who couldn't stand by while you destroyed our name. Sungmin's smile was cold. By this time tomorrow, I'll control everything you built, with the senator's full support. Outside the window, Ju-won spotted movement in the shadows near Hannah. A figure in black, moving silently across the warehouse floor. Zephyrin. You've always been smarter than me, Sungmin, Ju-won said, trying to keep his cousin's attention. More careful. More strategic. I've known that since we were kids. Sungmin seemed surprised by the admission. Then why were you the one who took over when Uncle died? Why not me? Because people don't follow smart. They follow confident. They follow someone who acts like they have all the answers, even when they don't. Ju-won shook his head. I never wanted this life for Hannah. I never wanted her to grow up like we did. Something shifted in Ju-won as he watched Zephyrin getting closer to his daughter. The crime boss he'd been for 15 years seemed to fade away. Only the father remained. Let Hannah go, he said quietly. I'll confess to everything. The real crimes and the ones you're framing me for. Just let my daughter walk out of here. For a moment, uncertainty flashed across Sungmin's face. Then his eyes hardened again. It's too late for deals. Zephyrin moved silently toward Hannah, keeping to the shadows. The warehouse was eerily quiet, evidence of Darius's work with the guards. Hannah, she whispered when she was close enough. It's Zephy. Don't move or open your eyes yet. The little girl's shoulders relaxed slightly at her voice. She had been singing softly to herself, the Korean lullaby Zephyrin had taught her months ago to help with nightmares. Are you hurt? Zephyrin asked, reaching the chair. No, Hannah whispered back. Uncle Sungmin said if I sat very still and didn't make any noise, he wouldn't hurt Appa. You're doing perfectly, Zephyrin assured her, kneeling to examine the device strapped under the chair. Her military training immediately told her what she was looking at, a fake. The explosive was just a small box with wires and blinking lights attached to nothing. A prop designed to terrify and control. But Hannah didn't know that. I'm going to get you out of here, Zephyrin said, cutting through the straps with a small knife. When I pick you up, keep your eyes closed and your face against my shoulder, okay? Hannah nodded almost imperceptibly. Zephyrin gently lifted the child from the chair, tucking Hannah's head against her shoulder and shielding her small body with her own. I've got her, she whispered into her calm, moving to extraction point. But before she could take 3 steps, a shout rang out from the office above. No! Sungmin had spotted them. He ran from the office, gun raised, racing down the stairs to the main floor. Stop right there. My men will stop them, he yelled, then seemed confused when no one responded. Guards. Guards. Only silence answered him. Darius had been thorough. Ju-won appeared at the top of the stairs. Without Sungmin to guard him, he'd managed to free his hands. He ran after his cousin, desperate to reach his daughter. Hannah, he shouted. Zephyrin. Sungmin reached the warehouse floor first, his gun pointed directly at Zephyrin and Hannah. Put her down, he demanded, chest heaving. Now. Zephyrin turned so her body was between the gun and Hannah. You don't want to do this, Sungmin. You don't tell me what I want, he shouted, his careful plan unraveling before his eyes. I've worked too hard for too long. Ju-won reached the floor, stopping several feet away from his cousin. Sung-min, please. She's just a child. She's your child, Sung-min spat. That's enough reason. The standoff held for a long, tense moment. Sung-min with his gun aimed at Zephyrin, who shielded Hannah with her body. Ju-won standing helpless, without a weapon. From the shadows emerged Sukja, a phone held high in her hand. The screen showed a news broadcast, a reporter looking shocked as she read from a teleprompter. Breaking news, evidence linking Senator Howard Westfield to North Korean intelligence operations has just been released to multiple news outlets. It's over, Sung-min, Sukja said, her voice steady despite her bandaged head. The evidence from Seoul is already viral. That's impossible, Sung-min whispered, his face draining of color. The senator assured me. The senator assured you of nothing, came a new voice. Senator Westfield stepped out from behind a shipping container, his expensive suit out of place in the grimy warehouse. 2 bodyguards flanked him, both armed. This is over, Sung-min, Westfield said coldly. The evidence exposes you, not me. I made sure of that. Sung-min stared at the senator in disbelief. What are you talking about? We had a deal. I never intended to share power with a common criminal, Westfield replied. I needed someone to handle the dirty work, someone expendable who could take the fall if necessary. He shrugged. You were useful. Now you're not. The senator turned to his bodyguards. Take care of this mess. No witnesses. Before the bodyguards could move, another figure stepped into the light. Darius, his weapon already aimed at the senator's head. I was hired to remove threats to children, he said, his voice cold and professional. I was told Ju-won Park was that threat. But I do my own research. He glanced briefly at Zephyrin, at the child she was protecting, then back to the senator. I know who the real monsters are now. The warehouse fell silent. 3 armed parties faced each other across the open floor. One child caught in the crossfire. Slowly, Sukja began moving toward her granddaughter. Her steps were steady despite her age and injury. Sung-min swung his weapon toward her, the woman who had comforted him as a boy when his own mother was too busy. The aunt who made him rice cakes on his birthday. Who never treated him differently than her own son. Don't, he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. Please, Auntie. Don't make me. But Sukja kept walking, her eyes never leaving his. One step after another, closing the distance between them. You were always such a good boy, she said softly. What happened to that boy, Sung-min? Where did he go? Sukja walked steadily towards Sung-min, the boy she had helped raise, the man he had become. Her voice was calm, like she was telling a bedtime story to Hannah. Your father used to cry, she said. After your mother passed. He would come to my kitchen and cry like a child. He never wanted you to see him weak. Sung-min's weapon wavered slightly, his eyes wide with surprise. He was so proud of you, Sukja continued. He used to say you had his mind but your mother's heart. That you would be the one to lead the family somewhere better. Tears began to stream down Sung-min's face. He should have given me the chance. He should have. He was afraid, Sukja interrupted gently. Afraid that if you led, you would become hard like him. He wanted to protect that heart. She reached Sung-min and with hands that had comforted 2 generations of Park children, she gently, impossibly gently, lowered his weapon. He was wrong to choose for you, she said softly. But you're wrong too, nephew. This isn't leadership. This is destruction. The gun clattered to the floor. Sung-min's shoulders sagged as if a great weight had finally broken him. He didn't resist when Darius moved forward to restrain him, securing his wrists with zip ties. The anger that had fueled him for years seemed to drain away, leaving only grief. Senator Westfield, seeing his plan collapse, turned to run. But Zephyrin, still holding Hannah protectively against her chest, had anticipated this. She'd positioned herself to block the exit. "You hired my brother to hurt children," she said, her voice cold with controlled fury. "You used my niece's suffering as a cover story. The authorities are already on their way." As if summoned by her words, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Zephyrine contingency plan had included alerting federal agents she knew weren't in the senator's pocket. Westfield's bodyguards, recognizing a lost cause, lowered their weapons. Smart enough not to die for a man who would never do the same for them. In the chaos that followed, one moment stood out with perfect clarity. Zephyrine finally set Hannah down, and the little girl ran straight to her father. Ju-won dropped to his knees, catching his daughter in an embrace so tight she squeaked in protest, then giggled when he refused to let go. "I knew you'd come," Hannah whispered against his ear. "Always," Ju-won promised. "Always." Federal agents swarmed the warehouse, followed by paramedics. Sukja refused treatment for her head wound until Hannah noticed the bandage and insisted with a pout that Halmiani needs to let the doctors help. As Sungmin was led to a police car, he locked eyes with Ju-won one last time. There was no hatred left in his gaze, only the hollow look of a man who had gambled everything and lost. Senator Westfield's arrest played out on live TV across the nation, the headlines already connecting him to years of corruption. The evidence from Seoul had done its work. If you've made it this far, you're truly part of something special. I create these stories for people like you, people who want to feel something, who stick around for the whole journey. If you've enjoyed this tale, please smash that subscribe button. It means everything to me. And I'd really love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight. Drop a comment, whether you're in Asia, Africa, Europe, the Americas, or anywhere else on this planet. Let me know you were here. 3 months later. The kitchen smelled like pancakes and coffee. Sunlight streamed through windows that hadn't been covered by blackout curtains. The house was modest by Ju-won's previous standards, a simple 4-bedroom in a quiet Chicago suburb, but it felt more like home than his penthouse ever had. The past months had been a blur of federal interviews and legal negotiations. Ju-won had cooperated fully, providing evidence against the corrupt elements of his organization. The price was steep, much of his empire was gone. But the legitimate businesses remained, restructured and clean. What he'd gained seemed far more valuable. Weekends were now for Hannah. School pickups. Breakfast together. The small moments he'd missed for 15 years. Sukja had moved into a house just 2 blocks away, close enough to spoil her granddaughter, far enough to give them space. She came for dinner 3 times a week, always bringing something homemade. Hannah, resilient as children often are, had adjusted to their new life with surprising ease. She still had nightmares sometimes, but they were getting less frequent. Her school reports praised her creativity and her kindness to other children. Zephyrine had stayed through it all, the investigations, the move, the adjustment to normal life. But she'd never explicitly said she was staying permanently. One evening, as Hannah worked on homework at the kitchen table and Sukja knit in her favorite chair, Ju-won found Zephyrine standing at the living room window, looking out at the peaceful street. He joined her, standing close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "She asked me again today," Zephyrine said softly. "If I'm staying forever." "What did you tell her?" Ju-won asked. Zephyrine turned to look at him, this complicated man who was supposed to be a monster, who turned out to be something much harder to categorize. "I told her that forever is a long time. But that I'm staying for now." She paused, a small smile crossing her lips. "And that now might turn into always, if that's okay with everyone." Ju-won's hand found hers. "It's okay with me." From the table, Hannah's voice rang out, "It's okay with me too." "I heard you." They laughed, all 4 of them, even Sukja with her dignified chuckle. Earlier that day, Darius had called his sister. Now working with federal authorities to expose others like Senator Westfield, he'd told Zephyrine something she'd never heard from him before: "I'm proud of you, Zephy. Take the happiness you found." And that morning, a new drawing had appeared on the refrigerator. 4 people standing in front of a house, under a bright yellow sun. The figure with braids was holding hands with a smaller figure in pigtails. In Ju-won's old world, silence meant danger. A quiet room held threats. A hushed voice carried warnings. But here, in this ordinary house with his extraordinary family, he was learning that silence could mean something else entirely. Silence could mean peace. Silence could mean safety. And sometimes, when the woman who once told him to stay silent sat beside him on the porch after Hannah's bedtime, silence could mean home. And that's where our story ends, for now. If this journey touched your heart, if you felt something for Ju-won, Zephyrin, Hannah, and Sukja, please smash that subscribe button right now. Your subscription isn't just a number to me, it's proof that these stories matter to someone, somewhere in the world. And speaking of the world, I'd truly love to know where you're watching from tonight. Drop your location in the comments below. Let's see how far this story has traveled. Whether you're in Seoul or Chicago, London, Manila, or Montreal, I want to hear from you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening until the end. And remember, sometimes the people who ask us to stay silent are the ones who are actually keeping us safe. Until next time.